But it's time to take a spin through the headlines here in France. And to do that, I'm joined in the studio by Alison Sargent. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Belle.
And it's a big day here in France. We heard a little bit about it in business. President Macron is unveiling and starting to push through his labour reforms in Parliament. And there's been an interview in Le Point weekly with him.
There has, Belle. Macron's media abstinence is over. As we know, the French president is often compared to Jupiter, the Roman god, in part for his kind of distance from journalists and from the people. Well, now he has descended from Mount Olympus, breaking the silence after a difficult summer. As we know, his approval rating dropped drastically. He told Le Point, which is a right-wing weekly news magazine, that he refuses to be judged on those first 100 days. He also defended his reform of the labor code in this interview, which is going to be presented today, as you said, Belle. And he said it's going to be a profound transformation. Now, according to many editorialists, this interview is a profound transformation of Macron's media strategy. It is not, however, a difference in any other way. Huffington Post France says Macron justifies everything he's done so far and doesn't give any ground. The site also says you can tell in this interview that Macron is really trying to get back some of the lyricism he had during his campaign. They quote a part of the interview in which Macron says he believes in, quote, the reconstruction of political heroism and an ambition to achieve what people say is impossible.
Now, reforming the labour code is one of Macron's most ambitious projects. There's been quite a lot of anticipation, it's fair to say, isn't it?
That's right. Well, this is the big day, le jour J, as the Parisien calls it, on their front page. They say that the text is going to determine the rest of Macron's term. France's business paper, Les Echos, meanwhile, calls it the moment of truth for the government. They're really laying out all of their cards on the table. So you can see French papers are really kind of putting quite a lot of pressure on this day. In a cartoon by Willem in Libération, we can see the president getting ready. He says, he's saying there to his makeup artist, who looks like a real artist, my opinion polls are at their lowest yet, so you need to add another layer of makeup. And the artist is responding to him, okay, but you're going to have to pay me a little bit extra. Now, that's actually a reference to the fact that Macron is sort of known for splurging on makeup. Over the course of his first 3 months in office, he's already spent 26,000 euros on his personal makeup artist.
My gosh, well, I wish our makeup artists here at France 24 looked like that. What a sight, what a treat. But whilst all this has been going on, there have been protests against those reforms. They're planned for September, for next month, almost upon us. Papers, though, are reporting that the opposition is divided.
One of France's biggest unions, Force Ouvrière, has opted not to partake in the protests that are being organized by another one of France's biggest unions. Force Ouvrière says that they actually feel the government really made an effort to consult with them while they were developing these reform measures, so now they're not going to protest. France's left-wing paper, Libération, is actually really shocked that we're not seeing a bigger outcry against this reform, which goes even farther than the labor reform during Hollande's presidency, for which, you might remember, we saw really huge protests in the street. One reason is the woman that you see on the front page of Libération today. That is Muriel Pénicaud. She is France's labor minister. Libération says she's got really, really great leadership skills and is a very well-known figure in the business world. So they think it's because of her that we're not seeing more opposition. And the paper dubs her France's first director of human resources. Well,
there are some people standing against her. And one of those standing against both Muriel Pénicaud and Emmanuel Macron is Jean-Luc Mélenchon.
That's right. Jean-Luc Mélenchon wants to lead the revolution. I mean, that makes some of his followers a little bit nervous, as you can see in this drawing, this cartoon by Cac on the front page of L'Opinion. His right-hand man there is saying to him, you know, some people compare you to Robespierre. And we see him looking quite a bit like Robespierre. Now, Robespierre was an iconic figure of the French Revolution, but you can see that Mélenchon's friend there is sweating a little bit because Robespierre actually wound up getting guillotined with a bunch of his followers. So Mélenchon has also organized a protest of his own against the labor code, also going to be in September. And according to L'Opinion, France's CGT union, which is organizing the other protest, is not happy about it. They feel that the politician is kind of encroaching on their territory in his effort to cast himself as this big opposition leader. Now, according to Le Monde, though, having Mélenchon emerge as the president's main opposition could actually be good for Emmanuel Macron because Mélenchon represents the far left, which leaves Macron everything in the center. And Le Monde says this is pretty much how he won the election.
And we should remind viewers that, of course, Mélenchon, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, was for a time riding very high in the opinion polls during the French presidential election earlier this year. Now, Macron's Labour Code isn't the only, or reform rather, isn't the only story on the front pages today, because Le Figaro is focusing on what seems to be quite a local story, something about a school principal from Marseille.
That's right. He was a principal in a collège, which is a middle school, as we call it in the States. So adolescents here in France, in the north of Marseille, so a very, very poor area. And he wrote a book that just came out that's called Middle School Principal, or Imam of the Republic. And he talks in it about how in recent years, he's seen many students becoming wrapped up in Islam in a way that he hadn't seen before. He says more and more female students are coming to school wearing veils, and that some are actually challenging the theory of evolution in class. And he says that the Ministry of Education really needs to do more about fighting radicalization in schools.
So actually not at all a local story, something that's very important to the whole of France, especially at the moment. Alison Sargent with the French papers. Thank you very much for that. And